Welcome to Art with Ian. Today we are talking about edges. This is a follow-up video to another video I did on edges a while ago. I'll put a link in the description for that. Someone asked me to do a little bit of a demo, so I thought I'd go ahead and do that. Now before I start, I'm just gonna do a little bit of work on this painting that I'm pretty much done with. I actually did a time lapse for this painting recently, so I'll put a link in the description for that as well. But I thought there are a few things that I kind of still want to do with this, and it seemed like a good place to do a little demo for some edges, talking about some edges stuff. But before we jump into that, I'm just going to do a little recap here on edges like I talked about in the first video. So the three types of edges that I think about in my art are hard, soft, and painterly. And they're also called found, lost, and textured edges. So you can control the way your viewer sees the work by utilizing how you engage with these three different edge types. For areas of rest, for areas of high contrast, and for the painterly textured stuff is kind of your painterly voice. The textures you choose, the brushes you choose, that has a lot, kind of has a lot to contribute to the way that your work stands apart from maybe someone else's work. So, value is kind of the overarching thing that holds everything together in all of art. Really, it's how we perceive light, and light is how we perceive the world. And so, really quickly before I jump into the painting and start the demo, I just want to talk about this hard edge right here. The reason, besides the crispness of the line itself, the reason why it feels so high focus and kind of in your face is not just because of the crispness of the edge, but also because of the value of the line as it compares to the white background. Now, if I were to turn a darker than the line background on, all of a sudden that line, you can still just about see it, but does that feel like a hard edge? Not really. I mean, it feels a lot more lost because the value comparison is controlling your eye. So I think that's a really important thing to be considering that I didn't actually really talk about in the first video, that how you engage with value, how you control your values is going to control how the viewer perceives your painting. So let's turn this back off and get into this painting a little bit here. So one of the things that I kind of wanted to mess around with is this area here in the background, right and through here. Now, if I want to keep going with some of these very kind of soft and pushed back details of the foliage in the background, I'm going to need to use soft and textured edges, but I'm also going to need to control my value. Now, if you take this color here, you can see where the color selection is. You can see the color I'm selecting. Watch the color picker area, the box with the color. Watch how little it changes as I move around. Do you see how tight that all is? Both in color and in value. But mostly I want you to think about value, because color, as much as it impacts much less than value. So as I go across this, look how little this is changing. So it's not just the softness of the edges, it's the control of value that is having a massive impact on what we see here. So let's say I wanted to get in here. Look at this here. See this value? If I paint that right there, that was this value right here. See, I'm painting it right here. Up here, see how much it changes? So if I wanted to work in this area here, grab this color, and this takes a lot of being patient with your color picking, your value picking, I should really say, and just paying attention to how it impacts. So right now I'm using, if I were to blow this brush up a little bit, I'm using a fairly hard but textured, let's look at the texture. See the texture? Textured brush. This is a brush I made a while ago. I actually have a video on how to make this brush, so I'll also put that in the link for that in the description. So I'm just adding a little bit more interest. I want maybe a little bit of foliage back here. Something that matches this plant. See this shape language? I want it to look like more of these plants are growing out here. That was one of the things, when I was working on the time lapse, that was one of the things that I didn't really get quite. I just thought, this has been going for a while. I think I had been painting for about 6 hours, and the time lapse, I was pushing it times 5 or something, so the time lapse was about half an hour, and I thought, I can't really push it too much more. People will probably lose interest. And I also have real-time painting demos on my channel, so for the people who are like hardcore, not faint of heart or whatever, there's always that if you were like really want to just get stuck into some super long videos. So here's some soft. It's kind of living somewhere between soft and hard, and a little bit of texture. Now I could also take this color here, this pink, and let's just see what we get from it. So that's like this, the value is the same, right now as what I have back here. So I'm gonna go lighter in value and slightly lighter in color. We're gonna lose chroma as we go back into the background, and just see how that looks. And then you have to use, your judgment. Does that feel like the same? Is it too bold? I think it's a little too bold, but what I'm gonna do is just paint it in a little bit, and then go get my original color and fog it down, and then I can color pick this again and use it for this other one over here. Okay, so that's a little bit of how I would do, to continue working back here on some stuff. Okay, let's not get, but I'm not gonna stay back here for too long. Let's go look at something else that's a different type of edge. So I'm pretty much done with Samus. I don't want to get too much into Samus, but you can see very clearly that the found edges, that Samus is my focal point. And so the very hard, crisp edges and her suit's made of metal. So, it really contributes, like, you want this to be hard and crisp. But even then, still, there's still softness going on here in some locations. Also, you can see the texture in the visor. That's kind of my voice as an artist. I wanted to give it this kind of little bit of grit, where it could have been done super clean and with like a sheen line, but I thought that this texture would add to almost like a bit of make it feel like the texture of her visor from a distance. In here, I would like to actually work a tiny bit on this. So right in here, let's zoom in a little bit more. These lines that show, these highlight lines that show the volume of this piece that's jutting out over that piece, I think could just be a little bit brighter for the eye to catch when zoomed out. So I'm gonna work on that, and then just in general, there's a little bit of cleanup that I could do in here that I didn't do during the time-lapse video. Now, this suit, I don't know, for any of you who are familiar with the Metroid franchise, you'll know that Metroid Prime 4, long awaited, is finally almost in our hands and playable. And we recently got a trailer for it. And in that trailer, this suit was revealed. But that trailer, that one little quick reveal of the suit is all we have. So I didn't have a lot of reference for the suit to work with for this painting, which was part of the reason why I wanted to do it, just to challenge myself and see what I was able to manage. And so all that to say, these details are partly made up and partly pulled from what I know is actually in the suit, but without having as much reference as like some of, like if the game was out and we had tons of screenshots and stuff. It's a little bit of just me guessing or just kind of making up my own design ideas that I like. Okay, so you can see here, I'm going for, see this hard line? I want this to look like the material is ending right here. I don't want the viewer to have any doubt whatsoever as to what's going on, which means I need a value jump. A soft value change there would not give me the look that I want. So I have to make a value choice as well as an edge choice as far as the starkness of the line, how hard it is. Okay, clean this up a little bit here. And I'm just going to add a little bit of like, this is catching light right here. And in here, just going to add a little bit of cleanup. You can see the texture of the brush choices that I was making here. And I wanted the suit to feel not overly like, yes, it's metal, but it's metal that has a texture. Like if you zoom in on metal, you'll notice that there's actually quite a bit of texture in it. And so using textured brushes, even subtle textured brushes, is going to make a massive difference to the perception. This right here, this is a great example of a hard edge that is softened through the choice of value and color. So because this is metal and it's picking up the environment, I've made a choice here to use a color that is closer to this color, but it's still not. I mean, look how much brighter that is. Now, if I were to keep going with this, I could actually lose the edge entirely into the background. And then once it's lost like that, see how soft that becomes. And that's a choice that you can make, and it probably works. It actually looks fairly good. But I wanted to make sure I maintained the feeling of the suit a little bit more than that, like being a hard metal edge, right? So not quite that much. But you can see that as much as when this is zoomed out, as much as this feels pretty cleaned up, it's also not like forensically clean. The lines and edges have plenty of texture and blur, and not everything's perfect. I mean, this is not the focal point, right? This is way down in her knee. This is not where I'm most keen for the viewer to be looking. And so I spent less time, down here rendering. Anyways, so let's just zoom back out before I get completely caught up in noodle land again with this painting. See, like these are just design choices that I don't actually know if this is completely accurate. It's just it's close enough, to, like, for anyone who's seen the preview of the game or whatever, it's close enough that they'll know exactly what they're looking at, and that's all I really wanted from it, to be fair. So I might revisit the suit again after I have more references. We'll see. Okay, last little thing. We'll tuck that into there. Okay, I'm gonna zoom back out. So you can see here that by using texture in your edges, you can create the feeling of a tactile material and also contribute to your own painterly voice. By using soft edges, you can stop the viewer from focusing on something and also contribute to a feeling of distance or a feeling of fog, which is also contributed to by value control. By using really, really sharp hard edges and big value jumps, you can create high areas of contrast and focal points, like we're doing here in this area. And combining all of those together, you can begin to manipulate how your viewer experiences your painting. Instead of everything being a hard edge all the time, or everything being kind of soft and nondescript, or everything being overly textured, you combine all three of these things, all three of these edge types, with your understanding of value and the control of value to maximize your control of the viewer. And that is, hopefully that's enough of a demo for you to kind of get your head around what I was talking about in the first video, which I showed a couple of examples, but I didn't actually demo anything out. I can really quickly create a layer over the top. Really quickly, I can show you a couple of the brushes that I like to use in context of just the brush themselves. So so the brush I was just using, the one I'm gonna link in the description so you can make this brush if you want. This is called my chalky render brush, and that's what this brush looks like blown up. And it's got, you can control it down to like whispers, right? Or if you push hard, you can control it into a fairly dark line, but the only way to get true opacity out of it is to actually kind of keep working it. And so in that way, you have the control to bring your, to go from textural, from soft to fairly hard. So it's a great brush. It's a good all-arounder. I use it a lot. I also use the pressure, just the basic hard round pressure size brush quite a bit, which it does what it says it does. You can get from like little tiny thin lines to fairly thick lines just with pressure. I also use this hard round brush. This is really good for getting, like if you wanted to use the shift trick, you hold down shift, or you click a point, hold down shift and click a point. This is really good for building things like that at the start of a project especially, or if you're doing architecture or anything that's difficult in that way. Then another brush I really like, this oil and acrylic brush set that I have. If I can find the link for it, I'll put a link to that in the description as well. This brush, particularly this brush, MA brush number 1-2, I really like. So you can see this painterly texture that it has, and this you can build up and you can create, let's just say really quickly, we're doing like a sphere of sorts here. If you would, just with this one brush and this one color, I could build and I haven't even changed my brush size. I could build a fairly decent rendering of a sphere just with this one brush. And so this brush is extremely useful. I use it a lot. Another brush I really like that I feel like works well with the way I want my paintings to look is this brush here, which you can see has nice like paintbrush feel, right? This comes in really handy for like you're painting grass, for example, right? Or fur, or lots of different things. It's got a great texture. Another brush I really like to use is this here. This also works really, really well for creating kind of canvasy feels. It's great for fabric. It also works really good for like distant grasses and fields, you know, things like that. This is starting to get kind of a mess. I'm going to delete that and start a new layer. And then this brush here, these are from that oil and acrylic pack, by the way. This brush has great texture. Again, really good for fabric, good for lots of different materials, really. And so by using these different textures that create different edges and have kind of good value control, you know, you can see how I can work that value up. I'm able to kind of meet the needs of my workflow with just those like 5 or 6 brushes I laid out there. And then after that, I use specialty stuff once in a while, but it's pretty rare. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully this helps add a little more context to that other video on edges I did some couple of years ago, whenever it was, 4 years ago or something like that. I took a break from this channel for a while because I was just too busy with my freelance stuff to keep making videos. But right now I've had a little bit of time, so I'm trying to get back to it. Anyways, so I hope that helps. And if you have any questions or comments, you know, get in the comment section. Let me know what you thought of the video. Hopefully it helped you out. And I'll see you guys in the next one. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, share it with your friends, ring the bell for notifications of future videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.